And this is about the conversation you'll want to have with parents and guardians with regard to math, with us changing over to the Common Core standards. This is meant for STs, RAs in particular, but also school guidance counselors if they want some extra information, and math teachers as well, since math teachers tend to specialize in specific grades or levels of math, and they don't always know what the entire big picture is. And anybody else who cares about students succeeding in math and getting set up for success in high school, college, and then in their careers. And so the changes that we've had with Common Core mean that they're structurally things have changed a bit for when things occur in different grades. And so if we focus first on, say, 7th and 8th grade, where very often students might be taking pre-algebra, that course no longer makes sense with the new standards. Instead, 7th grade has its own course, and so does 8th grade. So we have pre-algebra. Hopefully I said algebra and not pre-calculus. I teach pre-calculus, so I may have said that by mistake. Pre-algebra, like I said, that no longer makes sense. So instead we have a 7th grade course and an 8th grade course. So they have their own courses. And then in 9th grade is when we have Algebra 1. Now this Algebra 1 course is definitely a much more rigorous course than the old Algebra 1 course, which means that anybody who's been brought up on the old standards that we were using previously has to consider quite a bit of factors in order to determine actually what the student should take next year. So this will apply especially to middle school students, but also to high school. So Algebra 1. So in 8th grade now, with the Common Core standards, about 40% of this 8th grade course is actually algebra. So when students go into Algebra 1, they're actually expected to have that as a foundation, as the launching point. So they're supposed to already know a great deal of algebra going into Algebra 1. So this course starts with that assumption in mind and then continues to move beyond that. Okay? Now, to answer a question that might come, there are different questions that parents might have that could come up. And one of those might be, oh, so does that mean that since my student might no longer be taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade, does that mean that this 8th grade course is, the courses have been watered down? Now, of course, this answers it a little bit, that Algebra 1 is more rigorous than it used to be before. But this 8th grade course, while 40% of it or so may be algebra, that doesn't mean that it's a watered down course compared to when we took Algebra 1 in 8th grade. Instead, there have been things that have been replaced and changed, but it doesn't mean it's less rigorous. So we have more geometry involved. This 8th grade course is a true high school preparation course for math because it'll actually prepare students better for Algebra 1, and it'll prepare them for geometry, and it'll include some of the geometry that students actually really need now for Algebra 1, actually that they really could have used before, but that we never had. There are some foundations in Algebra 1 that are geometric in nature, such as the equations of lines, and in particular slope. Slope and the concept that's a geometric concept with slope, very much having to do with proportions in triangles and similar triangles. And so that kind of foundation will now is in the Common Core standards that was not in the previous standards. And so this course truly prepares students for this whole high school math career. So we have, so it's really important that students realize and parents realize that we will have 7th and 8th grade math, and that's in order to prepare for a 9th grade Algebra 1 course. So there are some questions that need to be considered for the parents when they're trying to decide what course should my student take. Because in Algebra 1, some of the things that I've been teaching in the past in Algebra 2 are now in Algebra 1. And so what if a student took pre-algebra already then hopefully they have enough to succeed with Algebra 1. Okay? It's possible that they may want to take, like let's say they're in 7th grade, they took pre-algebra. It's possible in 8th grade they would actually still want to take the 8th grade course to have better preparation for the high school courses. So there are a number of factors to consider there, though. So, for instance, if you look at how 8th grade, ninth grade, 10th, that would be geometry. 11th, that would be algebra 2. And then in 12th, we would have pre-calculus, although there eventually might be some different paths as well available. So because you're ending at pre-calculus, now one of the great things about this is from a pre-calculus teacher standpoint, the students will actually really be ready for pre-calculus. That's not the case now. We have students very often not really prepared for pre-calculus, and they will be with this, with this setup. Also, this means that when students are meeting the A through G requirements, these courses meet those, whereas students who are taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade, they very often were forced to push forward when they weren't ready. And so they were taking geometry in 9th, algebra 2 in 10th, pre-calculus in 11th, and they had no choice in order to meet the UC standards for A through G standards. And they were stuck taking a course they weren't really ready for at pre-calculus level. And the further students get behind in each course, the more behind they are in each succeeding one. So some of those things should be corrected. However, students and parents have goals with regard to college and careers, and some of those goals might include taking calculus their senior year. Well, if they want to be able to take calculus before they get out of college, out of high school, so that they're prepared for the college they want to go to, then they might be taking an accelerated program, and this whole thing would be shifted upwards. And so they might take a 7th and 8th grade accelerated course to lead them up to taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So if those are the desires of the parents and students, is to get into calculus by their senior year, then certainly this whole thing needs to be moved up. For the vast majority of students, this will be their path. Now, if I use my own daughter as an example, in 7th grade, she was actually taking pre-algebra. I switched her over the second semester to starting to take some of the beginnings of actually algebra at the second semester of 7th grade, and then chose to, I really wanted her to have a great foundation for this Algebra 1 course in 9th grade. So in 8th grade, I chose to have her take the 8th grade Common Core course. So that's what she's been doing all of this year, and I feel really good about the foundation she's been getting so that she'll be ready for this course. So what if the student is currently taking Algebra 1 in 8th grade?